Elevation Nation, we have a Terp joining the podcast for us. And, if I were to give his full intro, I think it would be the entire episode. So I'm just going to say Richie Frieman is a Renaissance man because this guy's an inspiration, pretty much dabbling in everything. And Richie, after meeting you, after reading your book, and after doing a little bit of research, I can certainly say you are living life how I think Parker and I are trying to live life, which is essentially just mini quests to figure out what you're passionate about, do something for a little while. When you get bored, you do something else. And so I'll let you introduce all the incredible things that you've done. But Richie, welcome to the podcast. We are so excited to have you.
Oh, thanks, fellas. No, I appreciate it. First of all, always Terps. That's always great. But I love what you guys are doing. And that's, I was turned on to you from a colleague of mine and started looking at the things you guys were doing. And it's quite online. And I appreciate the kind intro. But I always I consider myself a professional trier because I love that. After a while, you just got to give it a swing and see what happens. But, there's a lot of falling down and, things not going well. But a lot of people don't like to talk about that part. They think it's just, when they see somebody doing something well and they imagine that it's all, perfectly went as planned. And it absolutely did not go as planned for me, especially in literature for that matter. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I had interests that I've always wanted always wanted to find, that I always had a passion for, and that I want to find a spot of where I could fit in, or at least give it a try. And by trial and error, asking people, you'd be surprised how many people actually will respond if you just ask for their opinion on something. And then if not, you realize they're probably not going to want to help anybody for that matter. And then, just being open about what possibilities are out there. I mean, I started out as always an artist. That was basically the only thing I was really decently good at. And then went to Maryland, was an art major, left, was trying to going into like graphic design and advertising. Went into marketing communications, still, the regular 9-to-5 job, still doing things on the side, and started writing and started a website and with musicians. And then I was still wrestling at the time. I became a pro wrestler going the senior year at Maryland. So
can you share your name with the crowd? Because I think it'll resonate, at least with me and Parker.
Yeah. So my name was The Thrill from Israel, Buster Maccabee. But ironically, there's probably as many people on this podcast right now on the screen as there are Jewish people in pro wrestling. So most people thought I was Irish, and I was, but I loved. I mean, and you have to stand out. I'm 5'5". Back then, I was lifting a lot more, but I mean, I wasn't growing a lot more. But it was also, I went with one of my best friends, still one of my best friends to this day, and we were a tag team partner, and we loved it, and it was. It was great. We did it for about 10 years. Stopped once my daughter was born, but then I'll turn 46 in a few weeks, and I went back for my 40th birthday so my kids could see me one last time. And I wrestled my buddy too, so I was like, I'm not wrestling some 20-year-old hotshot who's gonna this is going viral or something like that. But it was great. Got to see my kids got to see it. Other friends that didn't know me back then, and my mom was in town, so it was great. But And really, I will say though that was a big part of a lot of the trying. I mean, out of everything I've done, that was the one. That was obviously. I mean, let's be real here. I mean, obviously the one that was the most unrealistic, and I understood that too. But I did look at it. I've looked at whether it's been the art or whether it's been something in the entrepreneurial space and with writing. I mean, there is a dotted line to things that you like, and. I'll have that argument all day long with somebody about how you connect those things, and they really do help. I mean, when I started wrestling, again, like a senior year in college, I mean, I always wrestled amateurly growing up, in high school and growing up on travel team and stuff like that. But, just gave you more confidence. It told you how to speak in front of people. It made you feel better. I mean, you could physically feel better about yourself as well, and much more willing to take risks. I mean, when you go out there and I shaved my entire chest, and I got baby oil on me, and I'm wearing leather pants, and somebody's yelling at me or looking at me up and down in the bathroom or the parking lot. I mean, it was a great, and then meeting these guys from all over the country I never would have met before too, and how you guys are getting into things, and you realize that that's a lot about what you do with business and with podcasting, with writing. I mean, I don't want to say I stumbled into literature, but I mean, I always wanted to do, but you don't know, like, where are you gonna, like, how do you start anything? Like, I mean, unless you can find it on YouTube, but you still need the people part. So it was really just about trying to find different avenues, and then one door asked for another door, and just keep on knocking them.
So, it's funny you're bringing this up. Well, first of all, professional trier is an awesome occupation. I mean, that is, I respect that a ton. And the wrestling, when I was reading up and learning a little bit more about you, was certainly like, whoa, okay, I don't know any Jewish wrestlers at all.
There's some of us.
Let alone any wrestler. So that was freaking cool. But then it's funny you brought that up, because Sam and I just recorded a podcast, and I'll give you a little lens into the mindset of a young adult, in your 20s, is you graduate college and there's this like facade that's created that trying hard is like not cool. Like, doing and going after your things that you want is like weird, or like, oh, it's a little like, dude, like, do less.
Yeah.
And you feel that in high school, in college, and even after college. But then you wake up and you realize, wait, trying hard actually is really cool. And Sam and I had this whole conversation about that, because trying is where you get to that next step, that next thing, that elevation, right? If we're calling it that. And I think it's fascinating, because we wouldn't be here, Sam and I, if we didn't try really hard at Elevation Nation and everything else that we're doing. And to your point, I love that you say that you're a professional trier, because whether it is in interviewing or book writing or wrestling or speaking in front of people or being a dad, trying hard is important, because it gets you to places that you want to be. So I think it's really awesome that you brought that up, Richie.
No, I appreciate that, Parker. I mean, look, you guys and it's a similar thing. I mean, the one to try thing isn't the sexy part. People don't, I mean, and then when you're doing it, they'll laugh. Every single thing I've ever tried to do, people laughed at me and told me it was impossible. Now, I'm not trying to say that I knocked it out of the park every single time, but like, I wasn't looking for that validation. I didn't ask for your opinion. If you're an accountant, a random relative is an accountant, and you're telling me how to paint or the idea of illustration or children, I'm not taking your advice. So and even with wrestling, I mean, look, physically, I didn't look, but when I wrestled and we did great, the fans liked us, the wrestlers respected us. We could walk in any gym, show proper respect, and do the job. And I didn't care if some random person that I never really liked in the first place, or some person I didn't know, was trying to say that was goofy and fun. I enjoyed it. That's all I cared about. And with literature too, I mean, it was, when I first started writing, and it was The Optimistics is my 8th book. Again, it was just like, it was very much so, I mean, how much money are you making, or how many books did you sell, or, well, why can't I find it in, the airport at JFK? It's like, these things don't work. It's a little different how things operate. And I've been able to be published in larger publishing houses and then smaller. And it's, it's like, if you're not in that world, then you really don't have an authority to really understand what somebody's going through. And that's the part I think is a drastic misconception about any form of, especially what with what you guys are doing too. I mean, it's the ones that are willing to stick it out are the ones that end up making it. I mean, in some way, shape, or form.
So I'm reading this book right now. This guy, pretty famous, Rick Rubin, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And it's an incredible book. It's a bunch of small little like tidbits of advice that he gives to the world. And when I'm reading it, I think about, we're all artists, right, in our own way. But then I think about people like you, Richie, where you're an artist, you're a writer. And I mean, this is just a genuine question that I have, is when you're sitting down in thought and creativity, are you writing for you, like in yourself, in your thought, in your mission? Or, I mean, this is your job too. Are you writing to then make it buck?
Well,
like, what comes first?
Yeah, well, okay, so a couple things. Before that, one thing that I've always embraced early on was the business side of art. And when I was at college, I was an art major because I was going to I wanted to go into advertising, graphic design, and again, I was like a C minus at best student when it comes to like math or like that. So, this was the path that I needed to go at. But, there were a lot of people there in the art classes that I took, and they were all trying to be very almost like, if you watch the Bob Dylan movie lately, he's like introverted solely and doesn't want people to say, I'm like, dude, if you want to sell something, then go paint in your room. Like, don't show anybody. Or if you want to go and be in a band then don't make a record. And, the people that I've met and take it seriously, they have to understand the business aspect of it. I need a market. I need to present myself. And, it's funny, like I took like promo pictures, a couple years ago, or maybe last year or so when the book was coming out. And a friend of mine's a professional photographer. And I said, look, man, this is what I need to image. Like, I need to look. I'm an adult, 46-year-old. I'm 40 and 45. I'm like, this is what you need to look at. How you style it and how it looks on a regular book cover and things like that. And, I had some, and he goes, look, I get it, man. Trust me. We're cool. And we brought over stuff, and I love my pictures. People are like, oh, man, who are you trying to be like? You're kind of a GQ. I'm like, go to a bookstore, look at any book that an author writes, and let me know if it's not what the picture looks like on the back of the book. I guarantee you it's something where, it's a more fashionable or modern look. I mean, I'm not going to take like a random selfie with my dog and put that on the back of the book. So even that was like goofy, people thought. So but it was that part of it. So when I to answer the question about, the process of it is that, yes, I write ideas that may never even see the light of day. I mean, on my desktop right now, hundreds of ideas that will never see the light of day. They could be a page, they could be 10 pages, they could be a paragraph, it could be a log line, it could be a title, whatever. And sometimes I'll go back to them, sometimes I won't. And then when I wrote The Optimistics, it was a similar thing where I met guys that had a very interesting story. And it hit me harder than anything I've ever worked on. And that pushed everything aside. And I said, okay, well, here, and this, for whatever reason, this was the one that was really meaning to put the process out there. But you have to wear the both sides of the hat. I mean, I was writing for myself. It's therapeutic. It's art. It's what I love to do. But I was also wanted to be good. So yes, people buy the book. They'll be aware about my work and young onset dementia and the Optimistics and the Alzheimer's Association and the Yes Organization. Any people that's my job. And if I don't do that, then I'm doing a disservice to the people that published it, the people that support me, and the people that paid to buy the book, and also, for more importantly, for this one particularly, is the people in the book. I asked for their time; they didn't ask me. So you have to do these things, and that part is, people don't like to talk about it very much, but that's just the nature of it. At the end of the day, I want as many people in the world to see my art, read my books, and to enjoy it, so I get to do it again. It's not, you can't just wake up and break up something new if nobody's interested in it.
You mentioned your book, which you were kind enough to send us copies of, and I frantically paused every other book I was reading, was like, all right, I got to get through this before we talk with Richie. But I was able to. I'm very proud of myself.
Good.
Because I couldn't put it down, man. Like, every story seemed to resonate with a different part of me. I started to take more brain power pills with some things and some research that I did, because I freaked out a little bit. Mm-hmm. You told the stories in a beautiful way, but it certainly unlocked a fear that I didn't even know existed, which was the battles that these people go through, and what they change into sounds even worse than death. Yeah. Because you are alive and unable to be yourself, and you have to rely on other people, and it changes so dramatically. And I appreciate you shedding light on a problem that I didn't know a ton about. I hate you at the same time, because now I have another fear that my anxious self did not need, but I appreciate it. I want to give you the opportunity. You said a couple friends, but there are so many chapters of different people in there that it certainly expands beyond those first four guys that you met.
Yeah.
Is there a specific story I know it's like picking a favorite child. Is there a specific story that you want to talk about to Elevation Nation that we can shed some light on, and how it impacted your mindset and how you go about your life day to day?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And look, you're right. I mean, it was the stories in there, and people have told me too that it's very hard to read. The topic is not. I remember when I was pitching to publishers. One of the publishers told me, they're like, Richie, we don't want to talk. No one wants to read about Alzheimer's and dementia while they're laying on a beach. And I was like, well, last time I checked, the Notebook did pretty well. But I was like, I said, but I kept trying. But I did kept trying to tell them. I said, these are love stories, and they are love stories.
Yes.
This is a love story between siblings, between parents, children to their parents, and then it's also from spouses to as become care partners. And to the point about where it kind of freaked you out, I mean, that's what drew me to it, because when people think of Alzheimer's or dementia, you think of an elderly person like my bubby, who I wrote about in the first chapter. That was my introduction to Alzheimer's, was watching my elderly grandmother, transform from my buddy on the weekends watching wrestling and going bowling to unrecognizable, and her not recognizing us. And I always thank my dad for being able to show me that, and he never shied away. It's like it was right around bar mitzvah time, a little bit younger, but and then in the teens, she went to a hospital, and but that was where when I saw Dennis, who's one of the optimistics, he gets I went to a walk to end Alzheimer's 2 years ago, and he gets up and he was talking before the walk at a podium, and he said that he was diagnosed with young onset dementia. And young onset dementia is not what you think about with your grandparents, or even early onset for that matter. Young onset dementia is basically it's basically between the ages of 40 and 65. So then you're thinking to yourself like, wow, somebody 40 years old can have dementia, and here I am. At the time I was like 43, 44, and I looked at my buddy who I was there with, one of my best friends. We were at the walk that day in honor of his dad, who just passed from Alzheimer's. And I was like, I can't believe it. I was like, and I mean, in their 40s, 50s, I mean, and Dennis was older. He was in his early 60s at the time, but that's when he was diagnosed. And he met two other men that were just like him, had full careers, had families. Mike works on helicopters for the military. He was an engineer, and then he was diagnosed in his 50s. And then Jim, who was one of the other original optimistics, he was a CFO at a major hospital. He was a 3-sport athlete in college, 6'5", 6'6", 225. The guy looked like he just walked off like a golf course. He looked like Men's Health ARP magazine kind of thing. I mean, he's just a great physically looking guy. But this disease, there's things you can do, and I'm not a doctor, but I mean, the point is that all the people that are interviewed in the book, all different backgrounds, all different careers, all different health standpoints, and it does not matter. But I, like you, when you said, I mean, I was shocked that it could be this young. And when I asked people about it, and I went home and I was talking to people, about an idea for this book, people that are in my generation and younger, a little bit older, and I didn't meet one person of friends that I had that are educated and coworkers and things like that knew that it was something that could happen this young. They all thought it was an elderly person in the wheelchair, in the nursing home. You're like, oh, it's okay. Grandma forgets things every now and then. It's like, it wasn't that situation. And the reality of having to understand the day you get diagnosed, there's that line, and you cross over that line, and your life is never the same. You can't work. You can't drive. You know that you're going to, this is an incurable disease. And what do you do now? And as a man, you're like, well, I'm a provider. And, ironically, all the men in the book said the same thing about driving. They hated the fact they couldn't drive. It was a constant issue. You get very isolated. You get very, your career is gone. And for the most part, people really hit the peak, and you're in the back 9 years. You've established yourself. You've made a career. You've got a name, and now, in your 50s, even 40s sometimes, you're retired, and now your wife or children have to foot the bill. And it's not something they all planned for. Nobody could. So when you talk about things that you take away, I mean, that was something that it really hit me hard about all the different stories. And from the first three optimistics, Dennis, Mike, and Jim, they thought about Alzheimer's and dementia the same way that we all did about it's older people. And like, yeah, I'm in my 50s, but I'm not 80. And they went to a support group in a meeting, and they saw people that didn't look like them, who were already, immobile or not speaking. And they said, this is not us. And then you go back, you get the isolation, depression, you go home and say, nobody's like me. I'm lost. I can't find somebody. And they all met each other at another Alzheimer's Association support group, and they became best friends because they saw each other in each other. And they dubbed themselves the optimistics as a way of basically finding an idea and a mantra about having those moments that make the most out of each day, understanding that they're not going to be there much longer. And that just really put things in perspective about being a parent, about being a husband, and career, and every standpoint from there on. When you think, and from that in the book, I basically, once I met the three guys, and you talk about like pitching business idea. I mean, I reached out to Dennis's wife on Facebook, and I was like, look, I'm an author. I have no book deal yet. I have no idea what this is going to do, but I have an idea. Can I talk to you? And eventually I got to meet everybody, and the rest is history. But the book went from just following these three guys and wondering, how can you be optimistic about life when you're handed this, to understanding there was a whole world of people out there. So every chapter is somebody else's different story. So it was not just the three guys, it was dozens of other people that had a very similar situation, whether it was their care partner talking about it and how they lost their loved one, or it was, child to a parent. And there is situations where it's a parent to a child, where, there's a woman, there's people where now they're in their 70s and 80s, and their children are the ones that are diagnosed with dementia. There's nothing scarier than that. You have to feel like you see these people are parents, and they have to understand to tell their children that there's going to be a good chance that they might not be around as much. And kids that are going into college, now all of a sudden their dad is diagnosed or mom is diagnosed. And of all this, everybody's story was something different. There's two that I'll point out, aside from Dennis, Mike, and Jim. Dennis I'm very, very close with. He lives actually a mile behind me, which is crazy.
No way.
Yeah, and ironically, and it's just, we knew a lot of people. When I looked on Judy, his wife's Facebook page, I said, oh, okay, we have some people in common. And so, Jewish Baltimore came together and saved me. So I was like, all right, I think we're okay here. But, there was one woman that I met, and she had young onset dementia is a very small section of the dementia spectrum, let alone this woman had and I'm going to butcher the terminology, but it's in the book, and she had a form of dementia where it would mess with her vision, and not where she was hallucinating or anything, but it was almost like depth perception. So, for example, she'd be driving and slam on the brakes like right before she hit a car, and then because in her mind it was farther away, and then she would see things and differently that weren't really there, and it wasn't hallucinations. I mean, she's lucid and around, and then but one of the disconnects, and she was probably I would say she was probably her late 40s, early 50s when she was diagnosed, and she's very, very funny, and she was telling me a story where she had a problem getting dressed, which is a big sign of her specific mindset of it. Specific type of young onset dementia. And she goes, I'm looking at this shirt on my bed, and I am cussing it out. And I'll save the cuss words, but she did not. And she goes, I know the buttons go in the back. I know where the sleeves are, but her mind would not let her put the shirt on the right way. And she was looking at the shirt on her bed, like cussing it out. Like, I'm gonna, like, I know, and like her, and it's wild, but it just wouldn't connect. And when I interviewed her, the title of the book is called Bicycle in the Shower, because I'm talking to her just like this on Zoom, and we're maybe like 20 minutes in, and she goes, "Are you in the shower?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "No, I'm right here. Remember, we're here." She goes, "Oh, sorry, look like you're in the shower." And then another like 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, she's like, "Are you on a bicycle?" And I was like, yeah, I'm on a bicycle in the shower. And then we started laughing, and she goes, this is just something that I just can't, you know, I can't control it. And it was a very interesting thing that went undiagnosed for a very long time. So there's situations where it was more, where she had, you talk about the isolation of it, she didn't, hers was so small percentage that her isolation and confusion was even harder to identify. Um, and when I mentioned that there are love stories in here, when you talk about spouses and you talk about what it's like to watch your spouse basically drift away and change into a different person, and I've been with these guys for over 2 years, and I've watched them decline over the years. And there in the book, there was a woman I met, and she went to one of the meetings, and I sat next to her. I didn't know who she was, and she wore like a nice red dress, and and then I looked over next to her, and she had on her arm, she had a tattoo, and it said "Hello, gorgeous," but it wasn't written like cursive wild, and it was like all caps stencil, kind of like a handwriting, and it just didn't fit. Nothing wrong with tattoos, but it just didn't fit a woman that was wearing this like nice dress and a tattoo that looked like a child had done it. And so I said, it's like, Kathy, I said, I'm sorry, but what does your tattoo mean? And she goes, my husband Dave, and he had passed away from that onset. Every day since I met him, he woke up, he said, hello, gorgeous. She goes, every time I answer the phone, hello, gorgeous. Woke up in the morning, hello, gorgeous. And that was what he said every single time he talked to her, regardless of whether they're in an argument or not. He was a contractor, like a home remodeler, so he was used to always using pencils and paper and writing like in the block letter kind of thing. So she said towards the end of his battle, he lost the ability to speak, and so when he lost the ability to speak, he wrote that down, and she stuck it on the back of her phone. And when he passed away, she got it made into a tattoo of the exact handwriting from him.
Wow, the exact handwriting.
Yeah, so it's basically his handwriting from that piece of paper on the back of her phone she stuck on there. And it was just like, here she is in her 60s, got kids, got grandkids, and it's a hard life knowing that, but it talks about the love that they had to be able to say that, to keep that moment together. So there's a lot of stories like that, but there's some really good ones that I pointed out. So
yeah, it's incredible to hear you talk through it, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, especially because it hits home for me. My grandma passed away right at the beginning of COVID. She had dementia, and it went from 0 to 100 very fast, like within 5 years. And so it hits home, and you're so right. It's someone who you to your point, watch TV with, have normal conversations, to a complete different person. Yeah. And so all your stories are just like resonating with me, but also, I appreciate this vulnerable and deep and real conversation, because that's what Sam and I are on a mission to do, and is help people, especially young people, get a little bit real with themselves. That life is obviously amazing and incredible, but bad shit is inevitably going to happen. And we believe that we know bad shit's going to happen to all of us. But yet it's the mental fortitude, it's the mindset that allows us to push through, whether it be through face of small adversity, whether it's something, you have a bad day at work, or you get a little sick, or you'll lose a football game, or your team loses its head coach, to big adversity when you're facing real life circumstances, whether that be someone in your family is diagnosed with a sickness, or even worse, sudden loss. And as young people, you don't ever think that stuff will happen to you. But yet we sit here, and Sam and I look at each other, and I faced tremendous loss in the past few years. Sam has faced tremendous loss in the past few years. Our friends have gone through circumstances that is all new to us. And so, Richie, we appreciate you and your work, and your willingness to come on and share these things, because it's so important for all people, but I think even more so for young people, to have real conversations about these things and learn.
And
As terrible as it is, it's also beautiful as well.
Well, and also it's a conversation I think also for men to have too. And that was the one thing that really drew my attention when it was the Optimistics. It was three men that were very vulnerable with one another. And, I think that they're, and again, they lived in a generation where, men don't cry, put your head, keep your chin up, that kind of thing. And, and they realized at the end of their, towards when they got diagnosed, that there's people that they can lean on other than their spouses and and family for that matter. And I wanted to open up that dialogue because, you realize that, your pool of friends and the pool of people that you can trust over the years gets more precise as you get older. I'm only 46. I'm like, some old man yet. But the idea is that, like, if you really can't have those conversations, and if you can have some, like, to be able to trust somebody with that and them not judge you, it's just, that's really the true value of a friend. I mean, I have friends that, will text, hey man, you got a couple minutes, and that's it. And I'll grab. I mean, everybody does this. There is no reason why you can't have a communication with somebody in today's technology. Like, nobody is that busy. I don't care.
No one's off limits unless you live without a phone, which is
no
one.
Yeah, no one's that busy. I mean, and again, if it's a quick text even. I mean, there's friends that I've talked with, and we don't get to see each other, but we'll text every now and then, and we'll just give each other a call. I'm like at the grocery store, and I'll give them a call, or I'm driving somewhere, we'll give a catch up. So it was trying to have that dialogue and understanding that even the younger generations understanding that when you're looking at somebody going through a tough time, it affects more than just them. And the last thing they want is somebody else to be afraid to engage with them because they're unsure about how to handle it. And there was a lot of people in the book, there was themes that crossed every chapter, and one of them always talked about the social aspect of it. And people, shockingly, sadly, and disappointingly, and shitty as you said, they did not want to be a part of their lives. They disappeared. They didn't want to go to dinner. They didn't want to go to visit. They said they didn't really know how to handle it. And it pissed me off so much because it's just not that hard. And here you are, you were friends with somebody for 30, 40 years, 50 years, and since childhood, and now you're gonna bail because you don't know how to handle their situation. There's no excuse for that. So
or even to that, and I don't know, but maybe they don't maybe think that person has much else to give them anymore.
Yeah.
Which is
and that's the situation specifically with Alzheimer's and dementia. But I mean, and that's just the awareness that, look, the Alzheimer's Association is doing a fantastic job about educating people. And there's groups like Yes out there that they're supporting different parts of different areas regarding the dementia spectrum, and like what Michael J. Fox is doing with Parkinson's. And there's people in that world that are finding the niche to help people out. And yes, they may not understand it, and that I totally get. But the last thing people want to be is forgotten, even if you're not there. I mean, even if they aren't as lively as they were. But you look at any mainly disease. I mean, you look at like the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, people were afraid to even touch each other or be around them or give them a hug because it was the stigma of it was just something that is so deadly, which it was. And now there's commercials with helping people figure out HIV. And then you look at cancer, and decades ago, cancer was seen as something where people thought that was going to be an issue where you were too afraid to talk to them. And now people are having cancer doing marathons in respect for it. And when you see somebody out at a restaurant, or you see somebody on the street that that seemingly went through chemo, or they have a scarf, it is what it is. I mean, that doesn't mean that they are any different. And the problem with the dementia community is that people think that because they have dementia, which I don't even like the word, is that they aren't there anymore and to do or had that constant value. So it's really sad. I have a short patience for that mentality, and mainly because I witnessed it with these guys, but I just can't see that doing to anybody that I know, to not wanting to be around with them regardless of the situation.
Well, Richie, I think you are certainly helping the world understand it a little bit more and understand the stories, understand the human aspect of it, but even some of the science behind it, right? I didn't know some of the symptoms of, not knowing how to put a shirt on was how dementia sometimes came out in patients. And so I appreciate you taking the time to educate us, to enlighten us on so many stories, and I think probably most importantly, allow other people's stories to be heard, because I imagine they felt fairly voiceless throughout. And so I want to thank you for that. I do want to move us into our next segment of the podcast, which I'm going to have be slightly more positive. Not that being a little bit serious is a bad thing, but I know, Richie, you are a lighthearted guy. Deep down, the thrill from Israel. So I'm going to start us off. First thing that comes to your mind, no right or wrong answers. You were a pro wrestler, like we talked about. What was your signature move? What was your go-to?
So my signature move was called the Buster Buster, which, it's not, you can't look it up. It's not going to be on Wikipedia or anything. But
Wait, does every wrestler have a signature move? Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, you got it.
Okay.
I mean,
okay. Just
come on,
making sure.
Parker, get with the program. Yes, I mean, it's part of the stuff. You got your music and everything. So, but yeah, it's called the Buster Buster, and basically, it's kind of I would like slide through a guy's legs. I'd grab their hand and I'd flip them over, like from behind, and then I'd and then pull them into a cradle. And then when Kenny and I, well, my tag team partner, we were a tag team. We did a double splash at the same time. So the guy would be on the mat, and then we would both jump off the top rope, and he would, one on the chest and one like on the midway, and then we'd pin him that way. So, yeah, I mean, you got to try to figure out a way to stand out whenever you can.
I love it. That's awesome.
I'm like wondering how you even come up with your signature move. Are you sitting in your bedroom and you're like trying different things? And then you're like, wait, this is the one, or like what's up with that?
Well, it's funny because obviously the image of wrestling. I mean, when I started doing it back in 2000, I started training in 2000 or 99. It was around that time. I mean, it was still behind the scene kind of stuff. You didn't talk about as choreographed. You didn't talk about the fact that people knew. I mean, people knew, but it wasn't out as what it is now. They're like doing podcasts talking, hey man, we just came back from just the match and how to go, and they're talking about the choreographed. Yeah. So it's open. It's been open for a while, but which I think is good. But it was something where when we're all in there, we're just a lot of us, you go to a gym to work out and to try moves. Like, hey man, I got a match coming up this week. I need to try a couple of things. Yeah, sure. It's like sparring. So you're always trying for stuff, and there's only so many punches, kicks, and elbows that you can give that make people want to, believe what's going on. So that was a big part of it. And yes, I mean, like most of the time we're all just sitting there goofing off and trying to find out what's something creative and how somebody that you're giving it to is going to sell it, because sometimes it can be the most painful thing in the world, and obviously you have to make it look like it.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, I got it. Well, Sam's been in the boxing rink. Maybe he's actually gearing up to become a wrestler.
Sam, you got to carry on the Maccabee name, man.
I might have to.
Well, I was going to say we're going to call him Mustache Man, because that mustache is new for me, but we'll have to think about that signature move for Sam.
Yeah, we got some for you.
All right. My rapid fire, Richie, obviously I'm a Baltimore guy.
Yeah.
What's your go-to place to just have a meal that hits every single time, and what is that thing?
Got it. All right. Well, I'm going to give you one Baltimore one, then like what people are expecting, and the best restaurant that ever existed. So two. One, when you talk about the crab cakes, whenever people come to Baltimore, they say, what's the best crab cake? What's the best crab cake? And there's G&M down by towards the airport and stuff, and they look like duck pin bowling balls. They're really big. Papas's I really like. I like as well, which is a great one to go to. Anywhere you really go in Baltimore, you're probably going to have a really good crab cake, because if it isn't good, then that place, no one's going there. So so a couple places like that. My favorite restaurant of all time is a restaurant called Miss Shirley's, which is in Baltimore, and it's a brunch breakfast place that has the greatest meals of all time. And I've always liked it. I go there on my birthday every year, and I go through it other times too. And I'll get like 4 dishes and pancakes, and like the best pancakes you'll ever have in your life. Everything is very good. Great family that owns it. People there are very sweet. The manager's amazing. So whenever I take people from out of town, like come in, I'm like, okay, we're gonna go here, because it just has everything for everybody, and it's off Cold Spring Lane. There's one in the harbor. There's one in
Baltimore staple.
So it's one of those things where it's a good place to take people where they're gonna be a good meal regardless of what you have, and they have crab cakes there too. So that's my That's my go-to, my my
Okay.
one place. Yeah.
Sam's gonna have to come next time we're in Baltimore for.
Give me a crab cake. I'll be a happy boy. Not that hard.
Shirley's.
We got good food. Trust me, Sam.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
listen. I love Baltimore. All right, Richie. Last rapid fire for you. You're an author. As you can see, Parker loves to read. My books aren't behind me, but I also love to read. Can you give us a book recommendation? I'm going to say not one of your own because we're now going down your books as well. But you can plug it real quick because I did just finish it. The Optimistics is an incredible book. But I'm curious, where do you find your inspiration? What's a book that really impacted you that you think we should read?
So yes, I mean, if you're looking for a good book, Optimistics. I mean, seriously, I believe that it's Sam said it changed his life. It's the best book he ever read. All this
True.
kind of stuff.
It's
I
up
mean,
there.
he didn't say it here, but he was telling me. But yeah, I'll give a cheap plug for it right here. But no, I will say there's one book that's been my favorite book of all time, and it's by a gentleman named Poe Bronson called "What Should I Do with My Life." Now it's I did take a little bit of a. I understand the concept. I always like the different people's stories, and basically he wrote the book. Every chapter deals with somebody else asking the question, "What should I do with my life?" And it's wild stories from there was like a doctor that wanted to spend more time with his son, and he became a truck driver and took his son
Wow.
cross country. There was a guy that he was American living in the States, and he got a letter in the mail that he was it was a Tibetan or a Southeast Asian kind of I want to say it was Tibet, but I could be wrong, something like that. But he was considered like a king or royalty or a god, and him and whether or not he was going to go back and do that role in a way. And he had this was not what he had signed up for, but he got this letter in the mail and said that he's a descendant of whatever it is. And I thought that was pretty wild too. Like I can't even imagine getting in there. And then there was just people that, again, they were really successful in a certain career, but they're like, this is not what I want to do. And what it takes to pick up and drop everything, pick up and go somewhere else. So that book to me was just awesome. And that was actually a book that really was a big start about turning me onto writing because I was not a very good reader at all growing up. I had a very bad learning disability. I couldn't get through a book to save my life. In fact, I'm not proud of it, but I tell people the first book I ever read cover to cover was my senior year of college. That was it. Nothing ever before. And I don't exaggerate with it. I'm not trying to be romantic about how wild it is. But I mean, that's why I never thought being a writer would be anything that I could do. But yeah, I mean, in my first book, it was actually about a professional wrestler. It was an autobiography. And I was like, I found something I liked, and I had time to read it. Then you got hooked. So, but when I read that book, What Should I Do with My Life, that was I was like, oh wow, this is an interesting story. People of all walks of life are just answering that question, and it's something you think about all the time, and you're asked, what are you gonna do with your life? So it's a good one. I definitely recommend.
Well, I imagine that you said after reading that, I want to write and become an author. And look where we are now. All right, last question for the conversation. This is a question that we ask every single person that joins Elevation Nation, both on the podcast and when Sam and I speak around the country. Everyone gets a mental motto. That is a phrase, a quote, a slogan that you live your life by, and we think that is the key to help you elevate your mental fortitude, to elevate in whatever it is you want to do. So, Richie, obviously we're very curious. Sam's got a mental motto. I got a mental motto. Thousands of people have mental mottos. What's your mental motto?
So I'm going to go with 3 words. Time is important. And I talk about this in the book as well. And it was a message that when I told Dennis, Mike, and Jim that I found a publisher to publish the book, Dennis wrote me an email back, and he wrote back. He's like, he said, well, and he said, I'm glad that we found a way for you to do the book. It must be a sign of Beshert, which in the Jewish religion is a sign of good luck and fortune and happiness. But then he said, he said also, time is important. That was it. And then, granted, he wasn't typing as much and talking as, back then he was talking more, but I have it. And what I did is I took that phrase and I wrote it down on a piece of paper, And I have the date in the back, the exact same time the email came to me, and I like keep it on my desk every single day. It stays there. I only take it out if I go give a talk. I'll show it to somebody because I bring up the story. But that mantra of time is important. That's it. I mean, it's like we only have so much time. What is really going to be the focus? How are you going to use it? And what's the most important thing that you should really be focusing on? Whether it's from relationship to work to family to career, whatever you're doing. And as I get older, I find out there's a lot of things I really don't care about focusing on that much anymore, and things that are. So time is important. That's the Optimistics motto, and that's definitely the 3 words that mean a lot.
Well, Richie, we thank you for giving us some of your time. Time is important. It is valuable. We know you're a busy man, being the Renaissance man of Baltimore. So thank you for joining Elevation Nation. Thank you for just elevating our mindset, elevating so many people's stories, their voices, so that they can be heard. And just appreciate you so much, and welcome to the nation. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm honored to be on here.
All right, Elevation Nation. Until next week, peace.